Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the UW Computer Science and Engineering Colloquium. It's my pleasure to present P. Anandan. Anandan did his bachelor's in India at IIT Madras and his PhD at University of Massachusetts. He was at Microsoft for many, many years, where he was a distinguished scientist, very well known for his work in computer vision. After that, he started the Microsoft Research India Lab, which many of us know, and people in this department have spent time there, and which has produced a lot of great work in developing world as well as other things. He is now Vice President of Research at Adobe, and he'll be talking to us about the impact of AI on consumers.
Thank you. Thanks, Hank. It's a pleasure to be here. Of course, those of you who know me know that I'm a Seattle resident, so it's sort of like home ground. It always makes me a little bit nervous to talk at UW, and especially when I see such a large audience in this kind of a room, which is a bit intimidating. It's funny when you give talks in front of people that you know every day. So you see every day, you don't get nervous. And when I give talk in front of people who I never know at all, I don't get nervous. It's in between friends who I don't see regularly. I come and give a talk, then you get the most amount of nervous. So this is, for me, in some ways, probably the most challenging forum, I think.
Very intimidating.
Thank you. So anyway, I think those of you who know me as a computer vision researcher, also my affiliation with Microsoft Research, where I was there for 18 and a half years. And as Hank said, I set up the Microsoft Research India Lab, and Richard is here, who's been a great collaborator and friend. I saw the ICTD lab, when I went there today, and a lot of good stuff. I came back a couple of years ago, and just this year I joined Adobe, as a part of their Big Data Experience Lab. I'll give you a little bit of a context there. When I joined Adobe, I did not have as much an appreciation about the topic that I'm going to talk to you about as I have developed in the last 6 months. I thought big data research very interesting. I get an opportunity to go back and run a lab in India again, something that I know how to do. But very quickly, I came into understanding about this whole area called digital marketing, which is one of Adobe's business, which most of you probably don't know about, and the amazing opportunities that it provided. And in fact, in some ways, the purpose of my talk, and these are talks I've been starting to go around giving, is really to get a lot of people like you, computer science people in OR, machine learning, data science, AI, to understand that there is, in fact, a very incredible amount of research opportunities and challenges and resources to do good research in this area and to get more people involved. So it's a little bit like a evangelical talk, if you will. So let me, without further ado, set the context. The talk, I should warn you, is going to be a bit broad and shallow because I'm really trying to introduce the idea of this domain of business and the technology opportunity it provides, rather than going into specific technical stuff. So it'll be a little bit light compared to some of the deeper technical talks you normally hear in the colloquium, I think. So let me first talk a little bit about Adobe's business to set the context. Now, this is a question I ask, and I always get more or less the same answer. I expect nothing different today. When I mention to you the word Adobe or the company Adobe, which I'm sure most people have heard of, what are the 1 or 2 or 3 products that come to your mind? Sorry? And? Yeah, so the 3 that, top 3 by far is Acrobat, Photoshop, and PDF, right? And so everybody knows of Adobe as this company that has, somehow has a dominance in the world of document creation and things like that, but also, more importantly, in the world of creative stuff, right? Working with images, graphics, visualization, Photoshop, After Effects, Premiere, and all those things. But there is actually entirely a different line of business that Adobe has been in, which is not very known to most of you, and that's what I'm going to talk about. If you look at the way Adobe thinks about its business, there are broadly 3 clouds. We divide our kind of products into 3 different clouds. Those icons are representative. On the left is what we call the creative cloud. As you probably know, if you're a user of any of these creative products, a few years ago, Adobe transformed our creative products from a desktop shrink wrap kind of mode to a cloud-based, product mode. So you have to kind of download from the cloud and things like that. Now, as it happens, it still downloads an executable that you run. It's not entirely a cloud-driven services. That transformation will take some time. But the model is ultimately these kind of services will be provided to people who are using them from the cloud. The second is a document cloud, which is, of course, Acrobat, PDF, and all that. The one on the right, which is the one I'm going to focus on, is called Adobe's Digital Marketing Cloud. And I'd recommend whenever you get a chance to just browse the web for that. There's actually a set of YouTube videos that explain Adobe's Marketing Cloud in a very crisp manner. They are animated, graphics kind of videos that will give you an idea. But that's not more what I'm going to talk about. Now, the way we got into this business is that historically, we've been the company that has helped people create, publish, and promote and monetize their creative content. It turns out the largest segment of our creative cloud products, namely Photoshop and Photoshop and Premiere and so on, are enterprise customers. As much as many of you individuals routinely use this, the place where we make a lot of money is actually in the enterprise because we get lots of seats from companies that are in this business. So what's one of the biggest sort of places where commercially these things are used in the context of promotions and advertising? So advertisers, when they create their advertising content, routinely use Adobe products, and it's not the only one. I'm just giving that as an example. So the entire business of creating visual and storytelling content for the purpose of enterprise, whatever, is very much founded on based on Adobe's products, Adobe's digital media products. But what we also realize is that there's an entirely another set of opportunity, which is to go into the domain where people are actually using those content. Why do these companies create those content? In order to actually deploy them in their web portals or in advertisements or whatever. And about 10 years ago, that domain of digital marketing began to take place as a kind of an interesting business opportunity and business domain, and Adobe actually got into it roughly 8, 9, or 10 years ago. Now today, I'll tell you more about the digital marketing in a minute, but to kind of give a perspective on where things are, it's not a huge company. It's about 15,000 people. I worked at Microsoft. Microsoft was 15,000 people in 1997 when I joined Microsoft, and it's like 110,000 people now. So, give you a scale comparison. Its market cap is somewhat similar. Adobe's revenues, this is like a year old, so it's probably closer to 6 billion or a little shy of that this year. It's fairly rapidly growing. What's interesting is about a third of this revenue, 6 billion, is actually from Adobe's digital marketing business. So this is not a trivial portion of Adobe's enterprise business, but it's actually a growing and a significant portion. And moreover, if you look at the overall size of the market on the creative side, there's probably some reasonable upper limit. There's only so much people are going to do. And I don't think we've got all the market, but we've got a very big portion of it. But in the area of digital marketing, today, our share is, say, roughly 2 billion. The total market size is about 5 or 6 billion. Our main competitors are Salesforce, maybe Autodesk and Oracle. But this, opportunity there is upwards of 50 billion. Because the technology here is still in a very early stage of growth and development. So in the long run, this is actually a very important area for our business. Why is this interesting to you? So let me go through some of the products and what they do, and slowly, I'm hoping I'll get you a feeling for why this is an interesting problem or interesting thing for computer scientists and data scientists and so on. I know there are some friends from the marketing department. I met them over lunch. They're somewhere in the audience. Hopefully, they made it to the talk, and for them as well. And I bet you probably haven't had talks in which you had people come from marketing department sit and see us. So that may be a first. So there are 8 products that Adobe has. We call them solutions. In fact, my marketing science friends are just walking in as I speak, and I saw them over lunch. So there are 8 products that we have. The most sort of well-known or the biggest in terms of market share or the revenue size is the analytics product. So the word analytics, I'm sure you're familiar with because everyone has heard of something like Google Analytics. The idea that we can try to understand how people are behaving online on the web and track it over time and thereby able to predict trends or anomalies, detect anomalies is the idea that behind analytics. In the context of enterprise marketing, you can kind of begin to see why that's important, because companies are always interested in knowing what their customers are interested in doing, when they are likely to buy, what kind of things they are likely to buy, how they are demographically divided with respect to the different things that they are interested, all kinds of stuff. And this data companies have, either through from their own direct web experience. In other words, when a customer logs into, say, Walmart website and does something, Walmart has some information. Or it's through, browsers and other kinds of stuff as well, which they may be able to get access to. And that's a very important part of marketing. So if you think about the way marketing was done, about 30, 40 years ago, it was not really centered around actual data because nobody collected data in such a systematic fashion. Of course, marketers did market research and things like that. But over the last decade or so, we have so much information about people's behavior because increasingly it happens online that companies are looking to learn something from it, get some insights from it. So Adobe bought a company called Omniture, which was one of the early pioneers in this field, and built a business out of it. Now, one of the important things here is that Google and so on have some free solutions that some small businesses might use. But when it comes to a large enterprise, they like someone to provide a solution that's maintained, that sort of, where the data is protected and privacy and all the guards and that. That's why there is really a business opportunity for Adobe. So that's one of our biggest sort of place in digital marketing. Now, from our point of view, from the point of view all, computer scientists, whatever, your background is, this is actually an incredible treasure of data and scenarios for where, things are being done that has a lot of opportunity for interesting algorithmic innovation. I would say the state of the art is not primitive, but it uses logistic regression, various types of machine learning algorithms that you might think of, applies them in a mode where marketers can get insights about the data, from the data about what's happening, but it's not at a place where it's very efficient and it's complete in the sense of what marketers might want to know and can know. So the second product, solution that's also a fairly large one, we call them Adobe Experience Manager. Essentially, it stands for managing the customer's experience. When you go to a portal or an app of some business, again, I would use Walmart or REI as examples. As you are browsing that, nowadays the content gets a little bit more customized to your taste, maybe based on recommendation information. But somebody in the backbone is actually managing that process, delivering the right content to that web page in the right place at the right time based on whatever algorithmic stuff that goes on behind it. That's what the Experience Manager does. Now, it's not, of course, the only, none of these products, by the way, are the only ones in the market. There are actually many small companies which play in the field. One thing about Adobe is that we have probably the widest spectrum of this kind of things, solutions, where marketers are interested in doing. So Experience Managers allow marketers to create and manage content and put them on their websites and dynamically change them in response to whatever is going on. So we actually do this for any number of companies, right? When I say we do this, by the way, just to be clear, what we offer in these solutions is actually a platform on which the companies will customize to what they want. So we don't kind of do it for each customer. We basically give a set of tools that our customers can use. Campaign. Now, any of you and every one of you, I'm sure, has received tons of notifications by email saying that we have a 20% discount on something or the other, come to Macy's tomorrow, or we have this special sales day, and I keep getting these, mostly annoying, but that process, again, has technology behind it, right? So in other words, somebody is helping the marketer create those messages, either they are push notifications on phones or email notifications or whatever methods that they are. This whole process of enabling a marketer to create the message, deliver the message en masse to a large number of people in a timed fashion. That's what our campaign solution does. Each of these, by the way, that I've talked about is actually through an acquisition from outside. They were not created at Adobe. One of the things that Adobe has been smart about is actually finding the leader in these different dimensions, bringing them in-house, and now we are in the process of kind of smoothing them out and creating a more complete, comprehensive end-to-end platform. Target. I'm sure you've heard of A/B testing, right? So you take, do different segments of the audience that you want to reach, and marketers routinely do that. Do one kind of promotion here and a different kind of promotion there, and find out, which one is more, appealing, and doing that in a, statistically rigorous manner and so on, and being able to do it, across multiple channels, not just A/B, but A, B, C, and D, whatever. That's what the Target product helps to do. Adobe Social has been about listening to the social media so that we can allow the marketers to leverage the dialogue that goes on in terms of positioning and pitching their content. We've actually recently acquired a company called Livefire, which does a lot more of that, and that's going to get integrated into this. Now, when you think about, again, many CS people, I'm not sure how many of you, especially the younger ones, know, the whole world of online advertising is through ad exchanges, where you have to bid for AdWords and get selected by Google Exchange and others. But there's the demand side of it. That's the side where the publisher is managed. But on this side, enabling companies to decide how to bid on these various exchanges requires a separate platform. So Adobe has a platform called the Media Optimizer that's widely used in the ad bidding game by the enterprise company. Primetime is a little different from the others. It's actually more like an infrastructure level platform, but it also does some content level work to enable delivery of media content. There can be television shows, movies, or whatever, across a wide variety of channels. So for instance, if you're watching the same a CNN show or an NFL game or some other Netflix we don't deal with. So you might be doing it on your phone, you're doing it on your PC, you're doing it on your TV. Being able to keep track of that, who you are, your identity, what you have done, and deliver it in the right place at the right time, that's provided by Primetime. Comcast is one of our biggest customers, so pretty much everything that happens if you're a Comcast customer, it goes through some Adobe technology. And the last is Audience Manager. Simply what it says, you have a wide range of audiences that come through different devices, different channels. Being able to correlate them to know that it's the same person maybe, and so the marketer likes to know who they are talking to. And they don't always have that direct knowledge. Being able to infer it, what type of audiences they have demographically and otherwise, and segment them and manage them. So these are 8 solutions, and one of the reasons I'm spending a little bit of time here is to just point out, I'll go into a little bit more in depth about some of the technology, but already I want to convey one point, which is that if you're thinking about as a person working in the area of data science or machine learning algorithms or some AI scenarios, there's fantastic opportunity in these kind of usage scenarios for doing something, right? Because right now all of that is done algorithmically, but algorithms, as you might expect, are at a certain stage where they're probably not fully leveraging the kind of rapid advances that are happening in the domain of machine learning and AI. And one of the reasons I'm here is to kind of get more people interested, seeing that there's a very interesting family of application, rich variety of problems. Basically, everything that companies do in the area of deciding how to sell and promote a product, how to promote and sell a product, even pricing, is done through algorithmic methods. And that's kind of like an end-to-end flow. We are in the process of, as I said, these are individual products, but we have a common platform beneath this that kind of integrates the data and allows customers to use. But not all our customers use all the solutions, but we are kind of making it easy to cross between them over time. Which brings me to the sort of story about where we are. Who are our customers? So this may not surprise you by now. Pretty much every leader in different verticals in business, be it media or be it financial services, banks and investment banks and so on, auto companies, wealth management, or hotel chains, entertainment like Disney and MGM. Most of the top brands in each of these verticals are our customers. Now, to be careful, they're not necessarily exclusively our customers. For example, they will use some of our platform, but they would also use Salesforce's CRM or Microsoft's Dynamics in order to do the sales bit. We actually don't have a sales CRM product. Now, I didn't know what the word CRM was until a few years ago, so I don't expect you to know it. But that's what sales managers use to manage their target possible sales leads and things like that, widely used in enterprise. We don't actually have a product there. So people who use our products do use other products as well. But ultimately, what this means is that we have access to data and information and the kind of challenges or the problems that these marketers face across this wide variety of business dimensions. So I mean, it's almost complete, really. There's not a type of enterprise where we are not present. So that just some of the brand names, you should recognize most of these, Lenovo or Sony, and these are all our customers. Okay, and these are not the only customers, but just to throw in some big names. Now, the part that gets interesting is this. If we have all these customers, which means that we as a company, as engineers, as researchers, have access to a lot of that data. So some numbers, right? So this is again a little bit old, so maybe it's closer to 50 or 60 trillion transactions per year. This is what happens in Adobe's Marketing Cloud. And for most part, we can actually use this data in our research and algorithm development and evaluation and things like that, right? I mean, we have to be careful. Some customers, wouldn't want us to mix their data with somebody else's, even for research, because they want to be specialized in terms of the value they get. But others allow us to merge data with others for our algorithm purposes. But whatever be the case, the sheer volume of data that we have, and it's every kind of data that you can think about. It's how much people are looking at something, how much people are responding to emails, how much people are buying. All of that kind of data is available. And one one sort of number is that 75% of the money that was spent in Black Friday last year went through our cloud. That doesn't mean we get a piece of it. It just means that some solution that was using our cloud was involved in the process, that the customer engagement, right? So it's a huge number. And when I saw that, we realized that if I'm really thinking about, doing new interesting research in advancing the state of the art in machine learning, any aspect of data-rich research, this is a treasure trove, right? Because we have great, end user scenarios as well as a large amount of data we can go play. And that's kind of what we are doing in our labs. So a little bit about Adobe Research Lab. Some of you, again, in the context of the older labs, the Photoshop and the visual stuff, we have two labs called the Imagination Lab and the Creative Technology Lab. These are the more classical dimensions of vision, graphics, some amount of natural language processing and things like that. About 6 or 7 years ago, we started this new lab called Big Data Experience Lab. And one part of it was started in India by my manager, who's now coming back to the US to run the whole thing. And I'm going to replace him in India. And another part was started here in San Jose. So we kind of have two sister labs, what we call the Big Data Intelligence Lab and the Systems Technology Lab. And the Data Science Lab is something we're just starting to have, which is focused on leveraging the power of this data into any number of Adobe's businesses, problems, and research opportunities. Now, of course, in order to do these things, we have various areas that we are represented. Machine learning, we have people working in NLP, data mining, some amount of distributed systems naturally because it's big data research, media analysis, even game theory and things like that. In my talk, just to kind of help focus, I'd like to thematically organize, the ideas into 4 different types of things. It doesn't mean that a researcher thinks about which theme they are working on, but it's a good way to tell the story, right? So there are 4 broad types of, kinds of intelligences that we can glean from the data and have actually sort of user experiences related to that. Content, naturally, because a lot of marketing is about creating content that's interesting, persuasive, to which people would respond. And I'll say a little bit about that. Mobile, I'm not going to talk about it today. It's a rapidly emerging scenario because increasingly the customer's behavior is very much on mobile, not on desktop. And it's also very dynamic and it's changing because as you're moving around, you get into new contexts all the time. There's a whole set of opportunities for mobile-based engagement and intelligence. What we call consumer intelligence is really about individuals, what they're interested in doing, what their tastes are at any level of granularity in terms of segmentations of people or even individual personal level. Ultimately, that's what you would want to get to. And the last is data, simply the large varieties of that data that we have and applying data science techniques to make some sense out of it and get some insights out of it. So we kind of think about our research broadly in these themes. Obviously, these themes are not permanent. They'll change and grow. For example, one of the things that we have recently been thinking about is going into VR and AR related to marketing. I mean, you can already see that, right? I mean, if you just do a little bit of search, there are quite a few websites which provides you VR kind of consumer experience, buying, shopping experience, and so on. But it's very, very early stages. And this is definitely something that will happen in the next decade where, your experience, and when I say shopping, I don't just mean buying consumer goods, but even the transactions that you do with respect to things like your financial assets and so on, you may actually be doing it in a VR world, collaborating with other people and friends who may not be nearby. So there's a rich set of experiences there that have not yet been tapped. So this is an emerging theme. Right now, we're not very invested in it, but it's something that we definitely plan to grow and do more. So these are just current themes. These themes will grow and change and so on over time, right? Now I'm just going to give a sampler of some of the technology that's been done out of the labs and is applied to some of the products. The criteria that I used for the ones I selected was, first, they should have actually had a business impact. In other words, they're not just lab demos, but they are either part of a product or about to be a part of a product that are being used to our customers. The second, of course, that they should have some technology and science behind it. It shouldn't be just too obvious. And the third, of course, is something that I can share with you. But more importantly, I wanted to do a sample that a little bit covered the spectrum. So I'm going to do a breadth of a few things just to give you a flavor. These are obviously a small subset of all the things that are there. So don't assume that this is all we do. So the first thing I want to talk about is insights and analytics, right? Now, when I talk about analytics product, basically what happens is when one of our customers, this is a person in the marketing department, they could be a marketing executive, marketing manager, they could be a data analyst or a data scientist or any of those people, right? They sit in front of it and they get a dashboard, they get a workspace. And the workspace behind it contains all the data that's relevant for their business, that they have access to. But the way in which that they like to look at it is that they like to get some type of metrics. And the metrics can be, how sales volume has changed over a period of time. Or it could be something like number of users who are coming to your websites. Or it could be something like, the different types of devices that are being used. It could be any number of, it turns out there are something roughly of the order of 500 metrics, that we allow people to have. And each of these metrics, has different dimensions, again, with respect to people in terms of race, gender, age, any number of those things. So it turns out the number of insights that you can cook is somewhere in this large cross-product space. What does that mean? That means that it's fundamentally hard for a marketer to decide what's actually interesting, because in no way they can go through all of these things. Now today, the approach is that marketers kind of know what they want, and we have engineered some rules to enable them to focus on the things that they want based on asking them some questions. But where we want to go with it is to automatically help them figure out the things that they automatically tell them what they need to know, right? Rather than them having to kind of say, can I do this, can I look at this, and so on. I'm not talking about the end customer. I'm talking about the direct user of our product, which is actually someone in the marketing business. Now, one of the things that we have done in that regard is anomaly detection. So you should have expected naturally, what's often interesting for the marketer is something that's not usual, right? I mean, if the trends they might already know, of course they would want to know, but they would be more interested in knowing something when there's something unusual that happens. So there are two aspects to this. One is that it should be something that's unusual. For example, having a kink, sort of a kink in the graph or a peak around a certain time, like Black Friday, that's not unusual. But so you have to kind of take into account the usual contextual factor. I think people who know about anomaly detection probably know what I'm talking about. But also, in some sense, they should be actionable, that you can do something about it. And equally important, and probably the more important thing, is that can we actually figure out which of the factors contributed to this? So for instance, you have something like the kink. Where does most of this variation come from statistically? So we've built some technology for this using logistic regression, basically. And that's currently being used by the analytics users, right? But this is really, again, a tip of the iceberg. A lot of one of the projects that we've been looking at these days is something called an intelligent alert, which basically automatically compiles all of these things and notifies the analyst before he comes in the morning and things like that. But I'll tell you later on where I think this is potential to go. Now, I told you about email notification campaign. All of you have received it. But most of the time, you probably don't open that email. I mean, occasionally you might open. One thing that surprised me when I looked at these statistics is that more people actually open and respond to this email than I thought they would. I just thought that everybody dumps them. But one thing that routinely happens is that people eventually become fatigued and tend to put it in the trash box or mark it as spam or whatever, right? So you want to kind of understand how to do this in a way that we would prevent people from getting fatigued. So we've done some modeling. So there are a couple of things that we have done. Is that one thing that there are two things I'll talk about. One of them really is to kind of keep track of individual customers on what state of fatigueness they are or what level, and then being able to control how much messages you send. So if you think that someone's likely to respond to less messages, you send them less. Being able to give the marketer a guidance on roughly at a very high level the number of messages you should be sending to this person who's in this state. Okay, so I won't go through how we do it. It's naturally based on some model fitting. And then one of the natural way to do this is, it's like a little bit like modeling death in populations, right? Sort of like after they unsubscribe, they're not going to come back to you. So instead of going through it in detail, let me show a demo. This is being given by the person who actually developed this technology. And so I'll let her explain it in her own words.
Marketers have always worried about database erosion and decreased response rates to their marketing messages. Here at the bottom of the screen, we can see as messages are being sent over time, these are the open rates and the click rates. However, as more and more messages are sent, many customers get fatigued or tired of the email marketing messages that they had originally signed up for. So at the left, here we can segment these customers into 3 groups. Here, this is the fatigued group. These are the individuals who are predicted to unsubscribe or mark the messages as spam. This is the group that we want to identify as soon as possible. We further segment the non-fatigued groups into 2 groups, the active and the at-risk. The active group are the set of consumers who have a very high conversation with the marketing messages, and at-risk are those who are dormant or have a lower rate of conversation. One way to address the fatigued customers is to reduce the number of messages to be sent. So the manual approach would be for the marketer to choose a threshold of the number of messages to be sent to the whole customer base. So they can choose, for example, either 7 or 6 messages to be sent to the group. Here each bubble is a customer, and the size of the shade of the bubble are the number of messages that they are receiving. So using this, varying this threshold, they can decide to choose the number of messages, and here we can see the percentages of customers moving from one group to the other. However, instead of a manual selection, we propose a predictive optimization process where we provide a predicted number of messages to be sent to each of the individuals within a period of time. Now, the identified number of messages can be different for different individuals, and it helps to, instead of the marketer to choose manually or to identify it on its own, the algorithm can identify different numbers for the different individuals. This will help reduce fatigue and maintain a healthy response rate from their customer base without eroding them. Thank you.
One thing that shouldn't surprise you is a lot of people's reaction to these messages actually depends on what the subject line is. You don't open a message, or you might open a message if the subject line tempts you to open it, right? So a fairly direct thing to do is to allow marketers to kind of, sort of, how do I say, construct the subject line in a manner where the people are most likely to respond, right? So let me jump into the way we do this, of course, is to do a little bit of NLP in order to understand, the words and so on, how they respond to that, and also use, data on people's reaction to different type of words and sentences, and then use that to help guide the marketer to create the proper subject line. I think it'll be more fun when I show the demo. So.
Hi, my name is Kokil, and I'll be talking about the technology for subject lines called authoring suggestions for email subject lines. Marketers are always on the lookout for ways to improve their conversions. However, according to the data we have, no more than 2 or 3 emails are opened out of every 10 emails sent. This technology aims to improve the open rates for the marketer's emails or any other short message by suggesting edits to the marketer's subject line and predicting subject line performance. Furthermore, it can also be used to identify the right audience for the campaign. This is the Adobe campaign dashboard, for example. To save time, I have written out a subject line here already. Don't miss, save $25 with your membership card. When the marketer will click test, he will see this dashboard, which will tell him about the projected performance of his subject line. First, we see here is the original subject line with some words in red and some in green. The red words are words which the technology is telling the marketer are not good words, or they were found to be negatively correlated with open rates, while the green words are words which the technology is approving for the subject line. Over here we see that there is also a suggested subject line which suggests the words today and you use our, which are found to be positively correlated with subject line performance. The first gauge over here is telling us that the original subject line would have a predicted open rate of 9.2%, but if you use the suggested subject line, it improves to 11.5%, which is a jump of 20%. At the bottom we have this graph. What it is showing is the categories of words in the subject line. The gray ones are the ideals. That means that this is how much percentage of these kind of words the marketer should have put into his subject line. For example, the technology suggests that a total of 30% words should have been positive in the subject line. It also suggests that 40% words should have talked about the days, for example Valentine's Day, or about festivals, or about seasons like spring and summer. The orange bars indicate the words which are actually in the subject line. So we see that there were 12% affect words, 12.5% inclusive words like with or together, but there were also negative words, while the technology is suggesting to have no negative words at all. Similarly, the original subject line had your, which is considered negatively correlated with open rates. Let's see how the suggested subject line does. We see that the suggested subject line is better corresponding to the gray ideal bars, and we see here that across all age segments the suggested subject line is performing better. There is a second part of this use case where using the group of top performing subject lines from our data, we are able to suggest how the marketer can generate any subject line. We provide a predicted performance for that particular subject line and also its comparison against the ideal. This technology is based off of 500 million emails sent to 3 million customers through 1700 deliveries over 3 months for Adobe Campaigns client, One Stop Plus.
What I wanted to impress there is that the volume of data that enables us to do this training, and that's just for one customer, right? So this is a blunt tool, by the way. I have a few things to say, and in fact, a lot of the technology that we have today are fairly blunt. So there's an opportunity right there. Content is very important because a lot of marketing is about crafting the right story, right message. It can be an advertisement, it can be a promotional email or whatever. And of course, marketers have a lot of experience in doing this. And broadly speaking, we think about content as having 3 major components, and our research sort of covers some aspect of all 3 of them. And what we call content semantics, simply being able to understand the content or being able to generate content, that means what you want to say, and being able to allow the author to edit content, create new content by bringing in other resources, but you have to do understand what the content is. The other stuff is things like summarization, expansion. Summarization is probably more familiar, but in many cases actually you might write a little bit, but you want to go to a larger sort of a format, and you want to expand, but then you have to go through various sources, repositories, as well as social media content to help you expand it. So there's an interesting set of stuff to do that. But of course, it has to flow and it has to be consistent. And the last one, which is a little bit more interesting actually, is people's reaction to content, the emotional reaction, the psychological aspect of content. And the next demo that I'm going to show is really about that. Okay. So one of the things that we've been working on is helping marketers understand how persuasive the content they generate may be. psychologists have kind of, think about persuasion consisting of three broad dimensions: the emotional aspect of the content. And when I say this, I don't mean the emotional aspect of the, content meaning or the semantics, but just the structure of the content, like, color of the figures or the shape of fonts or, how dark or light is. All these things can have an effect on people's responsiveness. And so it's a little more subtle. Just the credibility of the content, being able to be plain spoken or, positive words are supposed to usually be more convincing. Of course, it needs to be plausible and more personalized, more people are likely to react. And the last is the logical structure of the content. Again, it's not the logic of the argument in the content, but just a flow, kind of a easy to read structure, or maybe something even more, sometimes maybe not easy, but something catches your attention, whatever that is, right? So those are three broad dimensions, and, people have thought about how to do this. And we sort of take content and try to extract, characteristics along these dimensions, and then measure the performance of this content against people's reaction to the content. So the demo I'm going to show you is a kind of a result of that and a recommendation for content creation.
Now here is the dashboard for authors to create an email template and an email content. So first, they can choose a subset of customers for whom the content is being created. Then there are different templates available. So suppose they choose one of these templates. Then they have a combination or a collection of images. Now let's create this content as we pull in these images into the dashboard. Now as these images are being pulled in, you can see that there is a predicted click rate that is being calculated. We also can see the persuasion score for the overall part, the persuasion score coming from layout, persuasion score from image. We haven't added text yet, so it's still 0. We can also see the values of the features for each of these images. So we can see the motion blur, color harmony repetition in this image, and we can look at for each of these images. Now finally we add a text. Now let's write the text. The quintessential collection this summer. Now while we add this text, what it does, the text suggestion part identifies words with high syllables. For example, it has identified quintessential as a word with high syllables. Now let's look at the demo. So here you can see the words have been identified. So the quintessential, it has been suggested. Different other suggestions for the word quintessential, and then an adjective has been suggested for the noun summer. Now using this new sentence, our algorithm then calculates the suggested click rate, which is an increased rate from...
Kind of ended abruptly, but the main point, as you can guess, is to show by, tuning to these kind of parameters, you can increase the predicted, hit rate. So, there are a couple of messages I want to get. First of all, the various examples I showed you are fairly broad in the way in which they approach the problem of understanding either content or targeting to the user and things like that, right? And as you can also, if you can think about a little bit, you could probably even guess the algorithms behind it. They tend to be what I call blunt. In other words, they tend to be much more feed-forward model based on a lot of data that's targeted to a wide range of audience. But we are not that, as much as we are predictable, I think we are probably more quirky than we think they are. And the second is the part of the return engagement, right? A lot of marketing is not about sending one message. In general, it's about creating a kind of an engagement that develops over time. So there's some projects we've been working on what we call lifetime value analysis, as opposed to one-off sort of prediction about what things can do. But these are research opportunities really, and there's quite a lot to do. But I want to speculate a bit forward and kind of think a little bit about where the future might be, right? And I think this is actually very achievable. Now, if you think about consumer experience, say about 50, 60 years ago in the US, and I'm not from here, so whatever I say here is therefore valid because I can guess it. But this is, I'm sure you can recognize these characteristic Saturday evening post type of pictures. But there is this notion that somehow our experience was very personal. We went to the corner store and we knew the storekeeper and they knew what we wanted. My favorite sort of example is you probably went to the baker who knew what kind of bread your family likes on different occasions, and they have it ready for you when you go there. They know about your family occasions, your daughter's birthday, and there's a cake that's perfect for your daughter's tastes. It's because the storekeeper or the baker knows you so well, and there's this very strong notion of personal service. Of course, clothes were all bespoke, tailored, and at that time we didn't have so much ready-made. And then, the problem, of course, is that if I'm in a small town somewhere, my baker probably didn't really make the best bread. I mean, I could just, take a drive to Seattle and probably get much better choice. So we didn't have choice, right? We had personal touch. We didn't have choice. And then comes the era of department stores and shopping malls, and we have lots of choice, great prices made from all over the world, but you have to go to the store. However, there was even about 10 years ago when I went to Nordstrom or Macy's, there was a person there who helped me find what I wanted to do. But today we are living in this world of online shopping. We read reviews, we compare prices. In fact, I think it's well known that people go to the store and then check their phone and then get out of the store because they found a better deal for something they wanted somewhere else. But we are actually working much harder in order to do our consumption than we probably did before. I took a trip along the California coast about a month ago. 1 week, 10-day trip, 3 or 4 cities, hotels. I spent good portion of a day doing TripAdvisor and doing research on where to stay, the prices. That's a lot of my time, right? I think as much as we want to best get quality, the place where we want to go is really this. We want sales assistants which know what we want. And I don't mean, there's a robot that's actually standing there, but something where, it can tell me what I need, what I want, just about the time that I need it and want it. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because this is actually entirely possible. The knowledge that is required to anticipate what individuals want in their life cycle is revealed through a lot of our behavior in various things we do online and offline and things like that. And it's conceivable that if I were a business, if I were, for instance, Nike or something like that, or some other shoemaker, I can target, when to appeal to you with a certain kind of shoe, because I know something about when you bought the last shoe or what kind of things you like and so on. So but of course, it's not going to be a one-off push forward, right? A lot of it is ultimately getting it right and kind of having a conversation. So I think, if you look at where the technology for conversational, agents and bots are going, the kind of data that we have and the insights that we can get about individual customers, modeling sort of the mental state and, cognitive behavior of people, we can actually get here. And I do think that we'll probably get here in the next decade. And part of, my goal is to get more people interested in this domain to come and help us do this. Now I want to switch to the marketer's sort of evolution. This is, of course, caricature. In 50 years ago, marketers were these, creative jocks who would come up with the cleverest way of reaching to customers and the right message. These big-time marketers, I'm sure recognize Don Draper from Mad Men. I found this online, by the way. Somebody told me there's probably no show in which he actually said this. Apparently, it's quite common to put these things attributing to Don Draper. So I don't know if he really said this in any show or not. But be that as may, it's the case that I think people were very able to exercise the creative powers, and there was a lot of people working for them who did the market research and so on. However, they never really knew that it was actually working because the feedback was slow, and in the current world of rapid consumption and so on. So then we think we are in this era where we have a lot of data, and I told you about our 8 solutions, and marketer stands there and he has the world in the palm of his hand. But that's actually not true. The next one is a Gartner diagram. This is sort of the world of the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. And there's plenty of choices. You will actually see attribution and analytics and content marketing, A/B testing. Marketer actually today has a very complex job of trying to figure out which of these things they should actually do, which of these tools they should deploy, which of these insights they should get. So rather than making their life simpler by the power of data, we've actually made it much bigger. Now, one thing, of course, is that it gives a lot of job for data scientists and data analysts, so that's not a bad thing. But at the end of the day, it's not really serving the marketer to be more precise, more efficient, and more targeted in the stuff. Once again, I think the opportunity for us doing research is really to get to a point where we can have the power of the choice. We can have, at the same time, enable the marketer to engage with some sort of an autonomous sort of agents to help marketer precisely do what they want and do all the grunt work for them behind the scenes. So my general metaphor for this is this. If you think about, 100 years, 150 years ago, people were going in horse buggies. The horses were smart enough to drive themselves, right? You didn't need to do a lot of the piloting. But of course, they didn't go very far and they didn't go very fast. And here comes, of course, the last 100 years of great cars you can drive, but you have to deal with all the navigation, traffic, sitting in lines and things like that. We know where this is going, right? Within the next decade, we all believe there'll be self-driving cars. The horses have been replaced by, fast, smart horses. What did we do here? We took the same thing, right? We had something in which there was a power that we brought through technology, but we made it more complex. We had to do all the work ourselves along with technology. Now we are moving into an era where we're retaining the power, but getting rid of the, grunt work. I think this is, if it's true in autonomous, if it's true of driving, it's true of marketing. It's true of pretty much any enterprise. So one of my points is that this transformation that we are seeing, right, which is really enabled by machine learning, AI, and other technologies, actually widely applies to the area, domain of marketing and enterprise sales and marketing. So it's as rich a field, as rich a sort of a discipline as anything else. And I think, part of what I'm saying is that come play with us in this game. That's basically the end of my talk, and I briefly preside. Thank you.
We could take a couple questions.
Sure.
I'll start. So I don't know how you'll respond to this, but
yeah.
From the consumer, you were talking about the marketing side. As a consumer, which I'm a very good consumer, I feel manipulated all the time.
But you've been manipulated all the time.
And how do we defend ourselves?
Yeah, so actually it's a very good question. Okay, first of all, see, there are two things, right? As a consumer, you want to know when there is something there that actually interests you. You want to know that. However, you don't want to be blindsided by the marketer because they know how to tickle some of your attention and distract you from maybe the thing they actually want. My argument here is that by having information about you, you can actually have a sales assistant that you can trust. So the point is really, I think, the marketer ultimately benefits in some sense by giving you what you want, right? But the reason why they do this is because of efficiency reasons, scaling efficiency and so on. But we are moving into an era that actually they can get that same value, but still be more. So for instance, email notification, right? If I sent you the email just when you're thinking about shoes, you might actually open it and you wouldn't be annoyed by getting it, right? So in fact, I think one of the reasons to do this is actually to reduce the bad manipulation. Look, all marketing is manipulation. So when I say this, my marketing friends get a little offended.
There's two sides of it. One is it's true. When I really want something, I want to be able to find it.
Right.
On the other hand, I'm afraid to look for it. As my favorite example is, I want to buy an airplane ticket to Paris, but I'm afraid to search for tickets between Seattle and Paris because I know as soon as I do that, the prices will go up by 40%. And I've seen this week actually where I had to do a transaction in two pieces, and as soon as I did the first piece, the numbers on the second changed to the point where I wasn't going to buy it. So the amount of the instantaneous response to our actions, as well as trying to point us.
I know what you're saying. Look, there is two aspects to the game, right? One aspect is satisfying the customer. That's what market is. The other aspect is making the customer buy things they don't want for a price beyond what they would actually want. That game has always existed, by the way. It's not going to change. All I'm saying is that we can make that game more customized to your taste, and as a customer, you may end up having a bit more power because of the knowledge. That's all.
See if there are other questions.
But I'm not going to say marketers will stop manipulating.
Other questions?
I get about 30 messages every morning, and I delete them on my phone, which is, sometimes I don't delete them on my phone so I could go into the computer and unsubscribe, but they always come back. I get messages from eBay, Amazon, Best Buy, Office Depot, Macy's, you name it. Anytime I've been anywhere, they've got me The hotel, outrigger hotels in Honolulu, they love me too. The airlines want to know if I want to go back.
I got like 10 today.
Why would I want to read any of them?
In fact, you don't, right? This is my point. The reason why marketers do that today is because the tools are blunt. They don't know you well enough to know when to actually send you or not send you. So, we are trying to increase their awareness of when the customer is likely to respond at the individual level, but even that's a little bit blunt, right? So the real goal, right, I'm saying we do need actually algorithms and technology to help marketers do this better. I agree with you, but the only way to do this is, give them better tools so they won't waste your time sending these, bombarding you with your stupid messages. No, they might still do that. I can't stop that, but at least we give them better tools.
Hi, I'm actually a marketing faculty member at the business school. So, and then I'm wondering, a lot of stuff that you show are actually the kind of research that we do academically. Yeah. And I wonder, you show some very sophisticated methods. So I wonder, what is the state of research, like cutting-edge research, in the industry versus academia? Whether it's machine learning or marketing science. I don't know if you read marketing science, but versus the research jobs that you guys do either at Adobe or Microsoft Research or whatnot.
Okay, so first thing is I don't have a business school or marketing science background. And what you find is that a lot of these products have come through people who have learned how to use analytics, data science, machine learning technology, right? And now the people in the enterprise, in the business world, are trying to use it as best as they come. If you look at the way these products came, initially they simply started out as let's get you online, let's get you digital, let's collect the data and help you do something with it, right? Of course, as we do that, we are increasingly trying to provide them algorithmic support. So the kind of researchers that we have, Riley, are actually people who have a lot more experience in the algorithm and machine learning type of background, trying to apply that knowledge and that type of thinking to this area. Now, we do have a few people who know, I actually have a professor of marketing science who recently left his university job to come to work for me in India. So we do have people like that, and they tend to be typically from the econometrics and the quantitative side of the marketing schools, OR and so on. So we do have them, right? And there's a certain amount of conversation. But I was talking to some of your students and one of your professors earlier today. One of the things that's been sorely lacking is a good communication between people in the marketing science, the business school, who actually know the problems at a very academic and abstract level, and the people who are actually talented at doing machine learning and AI and things like that. And I'm actually planning to start an interdisciplinary conference like about a year from now. We just started thinking about it to bring these communities together to create a dialogue where you can actually state and identify research questions that would be of interest to you. So these two fields are not connected. That's why I was making a joke earlier. I went and gave these talks in a few places. I didn't get anybody from business school because they were not aware of the fact that I was giving these talks. So one thing that happened here is that some of you actually found out. But I think there's a huge gap there to fill, bringing people who are experts. Marketing is not a new field. It's been studied. You do that, right? But bringing a conversation with the people who are from CS background, HCI is another very important thing. So I'm actually planning to organize that. So, see. Thanks.
Okay, let's take one last question.
Last question. In the persuasion score on the emotional component, you have the rule of thirds. What is the rule of thirds?
I've heard about this. I don't think I can explain to you now, but it's a way in which you organize your message. But I'll refer to that for later. Right?
Okay, let's thank Anandan. Thank you.